I sympathize with you, because those of us who are tasked with the responsibility of ensuring that we manage the fiscal space put a lot of pressure on the revenue authorities. And my Commissioner General will tell you how much time I spend with him per week on phone, just trying to find out how much they have collected and putting pressure without even telling him how, that he must collect more revenue. And that even goes down to his support staff, especially the senior management. They are here, they know how sometimes I harass them directly. But we understand you very well, the kind of pressure, and I'm grateful that you are equal to the task. So domestic revenue mobilization ultimately finds central focus not just within the country, but also with the multilateral development agencies. This meeting is therefore very significant, as it will provide revenue authorities with an opportunity to exchange high-value ideas that have the potential to change the trajectory of our revenue performance. You are the technical people. You are the ones who can meet and share and compare notes and come up with strategies and solutions to enhancing domestic revenue mobilization, because that is the way to go. If you look at the world today, we are receiving less and less attention from our traditional and historical development partners. The attention in terms of funding is shifting. It is shifting to the Middle East. It's shifting to Eastern Europe. And the attention now is to finance wars. It's not to help developing countries come forward. In fact, I was not really a joke, but I was sharing my concern when we went to the Bretton Woods meeting a couple of weeks ago. I was sharing a joke. Rispa, it's not that one which I'm coming. That one I'll come to later. I know what you are thinking. But you see, my concern is in the war in Lebanon, the war in Middle East. We know how it started. But you find World Bank spending time with delegation and caucuses from across the globe to discuss how resources can now be released to help the victims of that war. Yet they know how to stop the war. Instead of just stopping the war, now the war, I don't want to say they are encouraging the war, but they are indifferent on the war and now asking for mobilization of resources to go and help the victims. And then you can see the mindset of the global geopolitics. And that leaves us somewhere hanging. I'll come back to that. So in addition to generating robust government revenue, developing countries must also tap into international taxation. And I think Commissioner General has just talked about significant economic presence. There are people who do business in our jurisdictions. They draw a lot of profits, but the tax that they pay to us is minimal. So that we must correct and make sure that every person who benefits from our infrastructure, who is supported by our economies, and we have no problem with foreign direct investment. They're very helpful. They create jobs and develop our economy. But we also want them to pay fair share of taxes, just like our domestic companies pay. So international taxation, more so in the globalized economy, so as to generate higher, more reliable revenue. So in the financial year 2023-24, East African community economies grew by 5.8% on average in real terms, and again at 14.5% in nominal terms. However, tax revenue growth was only at 13.3%, indicating that our tax collection is not keeping pace with economic growth. This highlights the need to reassess our tax policies and administration of revenue strategies to broaden the tax base and boost revenue collection. A lot of our economies are driven by the informal sector, and so we need to find solutions as to how to broaden the tax base, especially on these hard-to-tax sectors of the economy. It is also important to adjust our tax systems across the region or across regions to enable us achieve common policy goals. One of the effective initiatives in achieving this is tax harmonization. This can help promote regional trade, investment, and business by removing tax distortions, improving resource allocation, and increasing transparency, eliminating frontier controls, while enhancing revenue collection. So while customs tax statutes have already been harmonized under the single customs territory as outlined in the East African Community Customs Management Act of 2004, the harmonization of income tax, excise tax, value-added tax, and tax procedures is still underway. And I am aware that with the support of the East African community, significant progress is being made towards the creation and harmonization of the Tax Procedures Act, the Excise Duty Act, and the Value-Added Tax Act. This needs to be fast-tracked. So the finalization of the Harmonized Tax Procedures Directive will unify tax procedures across the East African community, providing greater certainty for taxpayers and facilitating cross-border trade. Ladies and gentlemen, our revenue administration also plays a pivotal role in trade facilitation. It is essential that we continue strengthening our unity to enhance efficiency at our border points and create a more favorable business climate. I am pleased to note that the East African community, with the support from the World Customs Organization, is conducting a regional time release study covering the northern and central corridors. The technical working group is currently meeting here in Nairobi to finalize the report. I look forward to the insights it will provide, which will help us improve intra-regional trade and expand access to external markets. I have only one paragraph left, and my team from Kenya will tell you that before I read my last paragraph, there is usually off the cuff, which end up being the main speech, because the local media like picking off the cuff than the written speech. In fact, I'm debating with my team whether I should be having written speeches or not. So two things. The first one, I know I'm dealing with a team that is mostly responsible for tax administration or tax administration implementation, those who are collecting taxes. But I know you talk to your policy decision makers. One of the things that I think we need to do to help improve the efficiency and effectiveness of revenue authorities is to think about the welfare also of the same institutions that we task with the responsibility of collecting revenue for us. I have said it before and I want to repeat it here. You can never get milk from a cow that is not fed. So you need to feed the cow. And I have committed myself since I assumed office. For those who may not know, I'm 3 months old in this position. And I've told my team that we must look at the budget of the Kenya Revenue Authority to make sure that our staff are also well taken care of so that they can have the morale and the motivation to help us realize our domestic revenue mobilization targets. That, I think, is a message we must speak across the region so that we have effective revenue collecting authorities. Something else, and that is where I'll end. Now you see, I said it. You can see this is the time you are clapping for me. Yet I read 90% or 95% of my speech. So I think my observation is correct. Going forward, I may discard written speeches and just get to this other off the cuff. The final one, ladies and gentlemen, we are Africans and we must be real. We must be authentic. We must accept reality. I have just said it. The attention of our traditional partners is shifting away from us. We like it or not. If today we are getting funding from World Bank to support our activities, from IMF, we must be alive to the fact that that the support is going down day by day. You know, I made this joke, and it became a very big debate in this country, that while we were in Washington, and by the way, we were not treated badly as such, but my observation, which I still want to insist on, is that it is wrong for us as Africans to board planes in expensive suits, fly for hours, and a lot of our flights are connecting. So you take about 8 hours to Europe, or whichever route you take, spend 6 hours at the airport waiting for connecting flight, take another 8 hours to Washington. And who are you? You are a whole minister for finance with a big team behind you. And what has taken you there is to beg for money. And then you take a whole week shuttling from one office to the other, bilateral engagement. You have to meet the UK, France, Japan, etc. Especially for Europe to be able to crack IMF equation. And you have to have meetings with the US to be able to get that good attention of World Bank. And then you find yourself in the corridor at times. You are told, come at 2:15. I arrive at 2:15, Rwanda has not left the room. I'm just giving an example. And then Rwanda gets out, I get in, and then after a short while I'm told, by the way, Nigeria is just behind you. So really, is that the way we should proceed? Given that we have natural resources in this continent, and we just need to do something different. You see, I'll give you the statistic. For Kenya, the commitment from IMF for Kenya is 1.4 billion USD for the whole year. They released just 675 for us after the 7th and 8th review. We are waiting for the 9th review. A 9th review meaning another ritual like the one I've explained for us to succeed. So this 1.84 billion is what we are going there to ask for. Our revenue collection is at 14.5, that is the tax revenue. Experts have determined that we have the potential of even reaching 22% of GDP. But even if we just increase from 14.5% to 17%, which is additional 2.5%, I would be able to get 3.5 billion. I'm going to Washington for only 1.4, but this gentleman and the ladies here and gentlemen can give me 3.5 billion very easily. So I'll have change, and a lot of it. External borrowing for Kenya in this financial year is 2.7 billion. Domestic borrowing is 3.2 billion. Now, if you take external borrowing and we enhance our revenue collection, as I've said, you would cover all the external borrowings and you still have about 0.8 billion left USD. Domestic borrowing plus external borrowing is 5.9 billion for this financial year. Out of that, if we collect that 3.5 billion, we would only borrow 2.4 billion, which we can borrow domestically. So what I'm saying in a nutshell is, if we get a few things done differently, if we get our domestic revenue mobilization right, then we don't have to stress ourselves going to look for money elsewhere. And I'm sure what is obtaining in Kenya is obtaining across the region. What we need to do is, one, to come up with policies to ensure that we broaden the tax base, and all that the people who need to pay tax, pay tax. And then we have systems that can help us actualize the same. That would enhance tax visibility. And then we have a motivated revenue collecting authority. Revenue authorities are motivated one. And then the revenue that we collect, and that is where I learned, is also utilized properly. Now that is not your work. That is the work of the gentleman standing in front of you and his peers across the region. We just have to, if we can't stop theft, can we reduce it by half? You know, I've given an example here that there is a say that is going around in Kenya that we lose about 2 billion shillings every day. People are stealing taxpayers' money. And I'm sure even Uganda, the same story. Tanzania, the same story. Yeah? Rwanda, Burundi, is the same story. We are made of the same DNA. We are cousins. We share, compare good and bad manners. Is that not correct? Some of us steal money here. We go to Tanzania, we invest it there. Because when we invest it in Kenya, it will be more visible. You also bring money from Tanzania, some of it by road, na magari. Mnapitia, mnakuja hapa Kenya. You start constructing buildings around here. That is what we do. So, if we are stealing 2 billion per day, assuming we reduce the theft, we don't want to stop it, we just say, okay, if you have been stealing 1,000, please steal only 500 shillings. If you have been stealing 100,000, steal 50,000. If there could be that, I don't know whether to call it conscious decision, but if there could be such a decision, ridiculous as it sounds, we would be saving 1 billion shilling per day, which would accumulate to 365 billion shillings. That is more than the external borrowing. So, but anyway, I'm not challenging you to reduce theft by half. I am challenging ourselves, and it is not even you. It is the implementers of programs, the ministries, the people you give money. You struggle the whole day. I know also the revenue authorities are also not free from this. They are also your officers who are around. They steal money instead of bringing it to the exchequer, they steal it. But even after you have collected that money, imagine how much you struggle. We put a lot of pressure on you to meet your targets. Sometimes when you don't meet your targets, we bang tables. Then you have met the target. You have brought the money. Then someone sits somewhere in his or her office and starts to steal that money, so that the money doesn't go for service delivery. How painful it is. That is what we are going through. So collectively, we must work towards fighting graft, because that is what is killing our economies. Otherwise, I am very, very grateful that you people have come to Kenya. I am sure before you leave, you will sample a few of our, we have a very nice game. Hata ndugu from Tanzania, I know you also have very good game there. But please make sure that you also experience the Kenyan. Kenya has a very serious diversity. So you are welcome to experience. We have people here who can take you around. If you fail to get them, please give me a shout.